the looting of Nigeria's commonwealth under the guise of full subsidy. Meanwhile, the acting Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has expressed concerns about the impending nationwide protest announced by NLC and TUC. While recognizing the constitutional right to peaceful protests, Egbetokun appealed to the parties involved to ensure that the demonstrations remain peaceful and not hijacked by miscreants. The IGP has also directed state commissioners of police to discuss with the leadership of organized labor to foster understanding and also reach common grounds on the planned protest. But we seem to have an update now. Our State House correspondent is joining us, where we're hearing that organized labor may reconsider its planned nationwide protest scheduled to commence on Wednesday. We understand that NLC Secretary Imao Gbaja says the measures announced by the president aren't the best, but that labor would go back to different unions that they represent to consult with the hope of reaching a consensus as regards the next line of action. Femi Akonde joins me live from the presidential villa. Femi, what's the update with the NLC's protest, particularly with what we're hearing from the secretary today?
Groups, that civil society organizations, a coalition of these organizations in northern Nigeria have said that they will not be part of this protest because they believe that it's going to severely damage Nigeria's fragile economy. Also considering that the country is coming out of a transition period and the administration of President Bola Tinubu is just about 2 months old. So what they are saying is that the government should be given time to get its foot on the ground and ensure that it has a good grasp of the situation and also be able to carry out the implementation of these palliative measures that the government has introduced. They believe that any strike at this point by the Nigeria Labour Congress will also hinder the full implementation of these palliative measures because they say as it is currently, the situation is already hard and it will be made worse with this planned nationwide strike. We also know that the Senate is planning to meet with organized labor to see if it can prevail on them to call off the planned protest. So there's pressure from everywhere. The police chief is also making strong warnings, saying that his men would be on ground to ensure that these protests do not turn violent and people do not also take advantage of the situation and take laws into their hand because they are watching closely what is happening around the country, especially the situation in Adamawa State where there's a curfew as we speak. So the threat level has also been raised and Labour will be putting all of these into consideration before they come up with their final decision that will determine the next line of action. Nifemi.
We're looking forward to that next line of action. Apparently, Femi is in our Abuja studio. Good to see you, Femi Akonde, live for us in Abuja. The big question now is, what is federal government's intervention after removing full subsidy? Let's get to it and bring you a breakdown of President Bola Tinubu's speech. Let's begin with manufacturing. According to him, each of the 75 manufacturing enterprises that will be selected will be able to access 1 billion naira credit at 9% per annum with a maximum of 60 months repayment for long-term loans and 12 months for working capital. Government is also funding 75 manufacturing enterprises, of course, with the 1 billion naira credit that we just talked about. The president says the objective is to increase the industry's capacity to create good jobs. We'll get back to this breakdown. Let's interrupt this lineup to bring you some updates on the plane crash that was experienced earlier today in Lagos. Ayomide Ajegbe is live at Oba Akran. What have you gathered as to what happened today, Ayo?
Thank you very much, Nifemi. Right here, it's been some kind of mixed emotions. First is the part where first responders trying to salvage what is left from here. And on the other side is some people in the community who are laying claim to the fact that they were the ones that rescued the victim. Now, it's a kind of a big of, I don't know, maybe some power play or power tussle here. But what I understand from this crash is this would have been a serious disaster, looking at a bank is situated here, and if this crash has happened right in the premises of the bank or somewhere around the inside the bank, it will have been something that we might not be able to salvage up till now. And look at just very close to me here, I'm not sure, there's a barricade, there's a trailer that may not allow you to see very well, but if you can see, there's a filling station here too. These are places where fires can be triggered. And of course, if you look at where the crash actually happened, this is an electric pole, and by now I'm sure there must be power outage in this area, and a gas plant. Of course, everything here signifies danger. Now, just imagine all of these things catching fire at the same time. Now, if this were to be an airplane, what would have happened? Helicopters have the ability to land anywhere, and sometimes, you know, they are able to, they can be able to salvage them in cases like this. I have right here with me the NEMA boss. Please come around, sir. What has been your assessment of this situation? What have you been able to salvage from here? We're told about the survivors here, and we're told about how the people in the community try to rescue those people here. What has been the effort so far?
Well, thank God it was an unfortunate situation for the loss of property, but very, very fortunate response for the rescue of the two crew members who are on board. Unfortunately, again, the pilot sustained huge injury on his forehead. They've been rescued alive, and presently they are responding to treatments.
Yeah, have you been able to ascertain the owners of the aircraft?
Yes, the owner is Air First Hospitality and Tours Limited.
So it's a privately owned
aircraft. It's a private plane, and based on first-hand information, according to Tower, I think it's on the test run.
On the test run. All right. Oh, of course, there's been first responders here. Lasema has been here. The community, of course, the community has been here.
Let me state this. The first responders in any situation are the community. Because when an incident occurs, the people within the community, that's why we want the community to be empowered. We train them, we train the children. If the community had delayed response waiting for statutory agencies, the crew members will have died. So their response as first community saved the situation. So in every situation, the first responders are the community members because they are closer to disaster scene, and they are always been empowered. And the children, so these are categories that we need to. They are the first responders, and they helped in rescue.
All right, thank you very much, Nifemi. Of course, you've heard from the NEMA boss. He has been able to confirm that the community people here were the first respondents, and they were the ones that actually were able to salvage the situation up to now. We'll be keeping track of developments as time goes on.
Ayomide Ajegbe live for us at Oba Akron in Ikeja, where a small plane crashed earlier today. There are discrepancies of figures, while the Lagos Fire Service is saying 4 individuals were rescued. NEMA, according to the man you just listened to, is sticking with 2. We're monitoring that development closely, and we'll bring you more updates at the top of the hour. Let's get back to Mr. President's speech as we look at the implication of some of his decision and what the implementation would mean for Nigeria. Let's talk about the MSE support that he promised yesterday. Financing in the sum of 125 billion naira is to be allocated to MSMEs and the informal sector. Under this arrangement, we understand that 50 billion naira conditional grant is to be given to 1 million micro-scale businesses between now and March next year. The target is 50,000 naira each to 1,300 micro business owners in each of the 774 local government areas across the country. The president said government will also be funding 100,000 MSMEs and startups with 75 billion naira. Each of these 100,000 MSMEs can access from 500 to a million naira at 9% interest per annum at a repayment period of 36 months. There's also agricultural support. According to the president, government is releasing 200,000 metric tons of grains from strategic reserves to households across the country at moderate prices, and also providing 225,000 metric tons of fertilizer, seedlings, and other inputs to farmers who are committed to food security agenda of the administration. We now know precisely what 200 billion naira out of the 500 billion naira approved by the National Assembly will be used for. 50 billion naira each will be invested in the cultivation of 150,000 hectares of rice and maize. Another 50 billion naira each is to be earmarked to cultivate 100,000 hectares of wheat and cassava. Recall that the president had declared a state of emergency on food production last month after food inflation hit 25.3% year-on-year in June. There are other plans for transportation support where government is releasing some money to acquire units of 20-seater of CNG fueled buses, and we'll be talking about that subsequently. But let's join our guest on the program today, partner and West Africa tax leader with the Deloitte, Yomi Olugbenro, joins us on the program this hour. Let's begin with your overview of the president's speech yesterday. Would you say he inspired hope?
Thank you so very much, Nifemi. Yes, I think we all recognize that the country is going through very difficult route. The decision to take away fuel subsidy, the decision to unify the exchange rate, we've seen the short-term impact in the economy, prices of goods, transportation, and virtually everything the household need on a daily basis have gone up. So the president coming in to identify with the suffering of Nigeria and to let them know that whatever is their concern and whatever is the issue they are going through, these things are getting to government and to leadership. I think it's important. And for me, that's probably the biggest takeaway for me. Empathy is extremely important in leadership. Of course, executing and doing what you said, it's also equally important, but it's a good start. And it's a refreshing return to what Nigerian we want to see in their leaders.
So 75 manufacturing enterprises are to get ₦1 billion credit, at I think 9% interest per annum to be paid for a period of time. How much impact will that have in the short term as we get employment, good paying employment for Nigerians?
No, I think it will go a long way. Access to credit has always been a major impediment to business and to manufacturers particularly. We all know what rate of interest. So if the MPR rate, the monetary policy rate is at the rate that it is, we know what the minimum borrowing rate will be from commercial bank for whatever venture. Most businesses will be accessing facility ordinarily at a rate well above 20%, and that can be very prohibitive. In addition to the very stringent requirement for collateral and for all of the prerequisites to having access to such loan. So when governments say, one, we will make it available, at least 75 large manufacturing enterprises will have access to ₦1 billion each for both long-term and short-term working capital support at a single-digit interest rate. I think that's a good start. Obviously, for the size of the economy and for the complexity and for the myriad of needs that will need to be assessed, you would say a lot more is required. But you also need to recognize that the country has a very limited, headroom when it comes to, availability of funds.
Indeed.
And when I listened to the president yesterday, I think I could quickly do a sum up of how the 500 billion, that, the National Assembly had approved, because he spoke to the 200 billion business loan, and that's where you have the 75 billion for manufacturing enterprises.
Indeed.
And you remember, you also mentioned it in your prelude, 125 billion for MSME. So that's 200 billion, right? There is also the 200 billion for agriculture and farm intervention. So the president spoke about 200 billion, being invested on, cultivating hectares of land, cassava and wheat. So that's another 200 billion. And then there is 100 billion for mass transit buses. So when you add all of that together, that's about 500. I'm assuming that's the layout of how
that money will be spent. I get you quite all right. If you're still there, I was thinking we could quickly get your reaction to how much government has made in the past 2 months. According to the president, the federal government has saved about ₦1 trillion from fuel subsidy removal. I mean, if you do the maths, that sounds like if we are making that much, then we'll be able to fully fund the 2024 budget without borrowing. Is that correct?
Well, that would be a long stretch. Remember that in the 20 trillion or thereabout that was budgeted for 2023, the deficit that was inherent in there, it's about 10 billion, or thereabout. So quite a long road to travel before you will move from, the 1 trillion saved to 10 trillion. So it's still a long journey. And it's on the assumption that the entirety of, the revenue forecast for the year is met. We're doing well on the non-oil tax revenue side, with recent, announcement by the FRS of how much they've made, over 5.5 trillion in the first 6 months. Indeed. But you also know that we have the oil revenue, you have the non-oil revenue, and all of that. So when we put all of that together, we still need to get to the end of the year to see whether the original budgeted 10 trillion or thereabout will be met from the revenue side. So it's a good start, but that won't cover all of our fiscal deficits.
All right, a good place to leave it. A big thank you to Yomi Olugbero, partner and West African tax leader with the Deloitte. It's good to always have you on the program. And perhaps the most controversial, thank you, Mr. Olugbero, for joining us. Perhaps the most controversial note in the promise of the president yesterday was the minimum wage. The president was quoted to have said, "I want to tell our workers this, your salary review is coming." But that is not the first time we're hearing that. It remains to be seen how the federal government intends to convince organized labor, which has now claimed that federal government hasn't been forthcoming in the previous meetings held in this regard, saying the subcommittee on wage award has not even been inaugurated and has not met. Let's take a few tweets before we go. We asked the question, what do you think about President Tinubu'S speech yesterday and government's intervention in the aftermath of removing fuel subsidy? Honorable Fadare Dami says, Mr. President's national broadcast gave a compassionate vibe filled with hope. I'm very confident and optimistic that the big sigh of relief will soon come. Like I said, the current pain is temporary. Hashtag first 100 days. According to citizen Olu at Jagaban Olu, the speech spoke to the need to tackle the causes of stress within the Nigerian economy, showed a deep understanding of the need to reduce the cost of food and support the small businesses that make up the bulk of our economic output. For Olalekan at Lekon_Ogunleye, it says, I'm not impressed with whatever a politician says in this country. They lie a lot. And Ayobide, rather at Ayobame_247, an assurance he listens to the masses. We decried the idea of 8,000 naira, which he concurred with, to. Those plans, according to him, are needed. And Nifesimi Ogungbe says the president showed empathy, sending a message he feels that the masses are going through. Nevertheless, the minimum wage should be a matter of urgency, as it will have a positive impact on the citizens in these suburbs. We'll take all of your tweets later on. Keep them coming. I understand it's now X and no longer Twitter. That's our program today. You can watch a repeat broadcast at midnight and at 6 a.m. tomorrow. I am Nifemi Oguntoye. I'm right back at the top of the hour with more.
following is a paid presentation by ShopX TV.
Do you spend the night trying to get comfortable? Your knees rub bone on bone. Your back and hips ache. You wake up in pain? Not anymore. ShopX TV is proud to introduce the Contour Legacy Pillow, the patented, ergonomically designed tapered leg pillow that naturally fits the contours of your legs, knees and thighs to help align your spine and alleviate pain. Watch, when you sleep on your side, your leg falls forward, twisting your pelvis and lower back, putting pressure on your spine, hip and sciatic. But the Contour Legacy Pillow cushions your knees and cradles your legs, relieving stress on joints while restoring your lower back alignment. Sleeping on your side, your leg comes over and puts you out of alignment, causing lower back pain, hip pain, even knee pain. By using the Contour Legacy Pillow, it restores the natural alignment of the spine, helping to alleviate pain and pressure, leading to much more restful sleep. Old-fashioned leg pillows are bulky, but the anatomical design of the Legacy Pillow fits perfectly the shape of your body